Hello and welcome to our program Newsroom. We're coming to you live from Islamabad and I'm Sharmeen Ali. A lot of developments today. The National Assembly had a session to discuss the coronavirus situation in Pakistan and also what's happening with the easing of the lockdown, which has just started to take place across the country, while cases reach a new high in Pakistan, and it's about 30,000 cases in Pakistan at the moment, with the death toll at 667. So we will be talking about that with our reporter who is there, and also again in a fresh round of firing across the line of control and increasing ceasefire violations by the Indian Army into Azad Kashmir. A young school teacher, only 22 years of age, was killed in her house while she was cooking. This is an innocent civilian again, which we're seeing over and over again, innocent civilians being killed and injured in Azad Kashmir, which is on the Pakistan side of the line of control. So far in 2020, the death toll has become 7, and there have been about 74 injured people. Many shops and houses have also been destroyed. We'll be talking about that with our analysts as well. And also a renowned writer, playwright, and the actor who created an iconic character, Jaidi, Mr. Athar Shah Khan, has passed away on Sunday. He was 77 years old, leaving behind a wife and 4 sons. We'll speak about that as well briefly. To begin with, we are going to be talking now about the National Assembly session and what happened there. We've got with us online Shabir Ahmed Wagra, who's our colleague at PTV World and is our correspondent. Thank you, Shabir, for joining us online.
Welcome.
Can you tell us about the Assembly session today, how that went, and which direction did it take? It was purely for the discussion of COVID-19, right?
Yes, it is purely for the discussion on COVID-19, and before the session, when House Advisory Committee that take place, that committee took a certain decision about that is a tradition that they consist of members from the Treasury benches as well as from opposition benches, and they decide what would be the course of action and how many days the session will go. So they have decided that this session will continue till 15th of May, and the whole agenda would be focused on how to deal with this pandemic, COVID-19, and what was the government response and how government can improve its response by different members will speak about that. And then the session started, and in the start from government side, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi briefed the House what the government has taken. He has given certain numbers that when it started in March, government has gone for the lockdown and also taken a certain extended their capability of testing from 100 per day to now 20,000 per day capacity, and from 10 labs which can do the COVID-19 test, now 71 labs in the whole country, they are conducting these tests. He also informed about other certain measures taken by government, the different relief efforts the government has taken for those people who have been affected by due to the severe lockdown. He also said that the government is easing lockdowns for the reason that it is having adverse effects, especially on the poor segment of the society. And he informed the House that this government wants to listen to the members of the National Assembly, and he appealed them that instead of point scoring and criticizing each other, the members should focus on productive suggestions regarding that how government can improve, especially this is a pandemic where everyone, the whole 209 countries have been affected due to this, the Foreign Minister said, and he appealed to the members from both sides that they should give very serious and productive suggestions, and their suggestions are very valuable, and the government will look into all the suggestions and will try to improve as much as its response is concerned. Then after that, Khaja Muhammad Asif from Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, he started instead of Shahbaz Sharif, who was not. He informed that he is not in the session due to some health issues, and he criticized a little response of the government. Especially, he criticized the government recent decision to ease out lockdown. He said that because the government went to the lockdown when we were having only 100 cases of coronavirus, and now we have more than 30,000, and now easing out the lockdown when we are talking about that still we are waiting for the peak in Pakistan. So that can have adverse effects. So he asked the government to take this session, during this session, they should brief them that what government really mean from the smart lockdown, what is this concept, and how government want to implement it, and how this will benefit the fight against coronavirus.
Right. And there were also some concerns by the opposition parties that that the Speaker of the Assembly, Asad Kaisar Sahab, he's tested positive for coronavirus. He's in quarantine, and they had these concerns that some of the staff and legislators of the Senate Secretariat are, testing positive. So they had concerns about holding this session. So what protocols were taken to prevent the further spread in the Assembly?
Yes, Shameen, on this, during the House Advisory Committee, it was decided that all the members of the National Assembly and as well as all the staff of National Assembly. Similarly, when tomorrow the Senate will start, they will also decide about this. But for the National Assembly, House Advisory Committee has decided that all the members of the National Assembly and all the staff of the National Assembly, they will be tested for COVID-19, and based on their test results, ultimately further decisions will be taken for the. But as a precautionary measure, it was unanimously given by both opposition and Treasury members that they agree on this, that there should be tests for each and every member of the National Assembly, so that there should not be any doubt that if someone is participating. Then again, for the precautionary measures, it was also decided that all the members will be provided with the gloves, mask, and sanitizers when they will enter, and they will be requested to wear gloves and mask, even the staff members, even the press, and even all the members of the National Assembly who will be participating.
Right.
They will.
Thank you, Shabir Wagra, for joining us online. That was our correspondent of PTV World. We also have joining us right now Mr. Javed Rao, who's a senior journalist. Thank you for joining us online.
Thank you.
Javed Sahab, let me ask you again now, the Senate session today, where do you think it's going to lead now as far as the concerns of the opposition members and what was said over there going forward with the planning of the easing of the lockdown, considering the number of cases is still going up? It doesn't seem to be yet under control in Pakistan.
Well, let me put my comments into two parts. First part is that it is extremely important for the government to run its business as usual. If the government business is disrupted, that means the entire country is going to have a disrupted business from top to the bottom. And the parliament has not met since for last 2 months. It has to have a session. Now, unfortunately, the fear prevails within the government, among the parliamentarians, that if they go to the parliamentary session, they may catch a virus. So we have to understand that all the tests which have been conducted so far, going by doctors themselves are saying that there is 25% possibility that these tests could be either way, right or wrong. There could be false or positive. So I think in this environment, when we have the surge of the cases, a large number of which could be possibly medically wrong test. So these parliamentarians have to discuss it. If they are scared, they are not coming to the parliament, whatever reason, I think that does not bode well for this country. And they have to discuss very critical issues. There are voices coming from the PTI of Sindh, and they are saying that the Sindh government is deliberately surging these positive cases. They are deliberately including those people who have died of natural death. They are being included as if they were died of COVID-19. So there are serious critical questions which needs to be determined, and these parliamentarians must come to the parliament. Now we have a hanging sword whereby these parliamentarians are reluctant to come into the parliament, like Fawad Chaudhry is saying that he's not going to come to the parliament. He's so scared. If he's so scared, I think it's better for him to resign and sit at home. Who is going to run the business of the state? These parliamentarians have to decide the fate of the country. And if they are so scared, they're better to resign. Or they have to find a way out where they can use a digital meeting. If that method is not available, then there has to be meeting of the parliament, and all these critical questions have to be discussed. How far these cases are genuine? How far these cases have been faked up, manipulated? There are serious questions which PTI Sindh has raised, and there are serious, genuine, growing complaint among the victim families that their loved ones died of natural death. They were listed as COVID patients. And similarly, there are reports which are credible reports, which are suggesting that all those tests which have been conducted so far, their results are not authentic. And then very, very important point that I would like to highlight here, that Pakistani media, particularly I'm talking of the private media, they are not addressing those complaints. I have heard even from one friend of mine in a mainstream media, he's saying that they have the administration of the television, they've asked them not to report any family who is complaining that their loved ones were included in the
Right. Thank you, Javed Rana, who is a senior analyst, speaking about the National Assembly session today about coronavirus. Moving on to this, the state of the line of control and the ceasefire violations, which we're seeing on an almost a daily basis right now, happening by the Indian Army into Azad Kashmir, targeting innocent civilians. Most recently, a young 22-year-old school teacher has been killed, unfortunately, while she was cooking in her home. We have with us online Lieutenant General Rosamamma, who is a former president of National Defence University. Thank you, General Saab, for joining us.
You're welcome.
Sir, again, a very tragic case of this young girl, 22-year-old housewife teacher who's been killed in Azad Kashmir due to the firing across the line of control. The Indian military is frequently using light and heavy arms and targeting the civilian population as usual.
Yes, this is actually a continuation of Indian policy by other means for essentially two purposes. The first one is to divert the attention of the world from the barbarities that it is perpetuating on Muslims, on its Muslim populations and minorities in general, and Kashmiris in particular. And secondly, the purpose is to create some kind of conditions for false flag operations. So here, comes the vital role of the United Nations peacekeepers, the United Nations military observers group in India and Pakistan. The ones who are here in Pakistan are doing their duty, and they are regularly reporting the UN Peace Office and the UN Secretary General. But unfortunately, the UN Military Observer Group in India, they are actually under house arrest in Srinagar. They should be allowed, the UN should insist that they come and do authentic verifications of all these violations of the ceasefire line. The Indians are also in the habit of putting blames on Pakistan about infiltrations, which again are absolutely absurd because they have multiple layers of defenses on the line of control, which comprises barbed wires, trenches, bunkers, watchtowers, drones, satellites. There is active patrolling, and there is observed artillery fire. So therefore, they need to, undertake the security audit of their forces there and punish them for their incompetence rather than blaming Pakistan for that. Also, there is a need for the world, to take cognizance of what they're doing in Kashmir. There is a curfew for now over 9 months there, and there is this lockdown because of COVID-19. So the poor Kashmiris are under a double dilemma. And for this alone, I think the Indian leadership, as well as their military leadership, they need to be tried for war crimes, and so that this can put an end to whatever is happening. You made a
Right.
mention of the murder and the martyrs of many civilians, whether it is on this side of the line of control or on that side. Again, this is something which has been noted now by, I think, dozens of human rights organizations from the United Nations and those who are independent. They need to actually come forward and put pressures on India to stop this. The Middle
Right.
Eastern countries, which have been hearing in the past of Islamophobia in India. So they need to actually rise up now and put additional pressure on India to stop doing whatever they are doing there in Kashmir, not only in Kashmir but also in mainland India.
Right. Sir, also you had mentioned the UN Military Observer Group in India and Pakistan. Now, over decades, we've seen that their role has been very limited. In Pakistan, they're able to conduct their work, but in India, it's not taking place. International observers are not allowed in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Journalists, independent journalists are not allowed. Indian journalists get detained, Kashmiri journalists get detained arbitrarily for reporting the killings of protesters and citizens over there. So what recourse is there when the group that's supposed to be monitoring is not doing their job and they're not enforcing that?
Well, I would say that I think this is the weakness of the United Nations Security Council, which have met last year a number of times. But I think this issue was not highlighted, and I think this now needs to be done. And Pakistan, China, who are actually a party to the conflict, can once again raise this issue. And the United Nations Secretary General needs to offer the addition of such observers to both India and Pakistan, and actually India should welcome it rather than blaming Pakistan for it. They should ask for more United Nations military observers there in India, so that the issue is amicably resolved. Uh, Not only that, but also the issues that they are nowadays having with China. I think even there, military observers may be needed more so on the Indian side, because they have been provocating China last year, and also recently they have been doing that. So the UN Security Council, the General Assembly, they need to come forward and prevent India from bullying its neighbors. It has
Right.
done so with recently with Nepal, when it tried to construct, a road to Tibet through disputed areas. So I think there has to be an international response to prevent India from all its aggressive designs that it is undertaking against all its neighbors.
Right. So you mentioned that they also have tensions with China. Now, the Indian and Chinese troops had a border face-off just now recently on Saturday. This was in North Sikkim, and there were several injuries to soldiers on both sides. And then they sort of disengaged after some dialogue at the local level. And this has been an ongoing situation between India and China. It happened in 2019. In 2017, 18, and then it got settled during the Wuhan summit between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi, but now it seems to have sort of heated up again.
Absolutely, I think I would take you back first to the 1962 Sino-Indian War, where again there was this provocation by the Indian side, and the Indian troops had crossed over into areas that were claimed by China, and China was compelled to respond to that, and because of that, India suffered a very humiliating defeat. They should not forget that. And whether it is China or whether it is Pakistan, I think we will respond to such provocations. We have responded to such provocation in the past, and we will do so, in the future as well. India is provoking China because it is still hosting Dalai Lama. And Tibet is a part of China, and uh, they are constructing roads through Nepal. Nepal itself has very recently, I think there are large scale protests going on in Nepal for the Indian efforts to construct a road through disputed Nepalese territory. And the Indians are saying that they are trying to do that, to connect to connect India via Nepal to some religious site in Tibet, which is again a grave sort of provocation. And it is luck that has prevented in the past, the escalation of conflicts, whether it was on the matter of Kashmir or on the matter of the disputed territories between India and China. I think Pakistan and China have played a very, very positive, a very, very mature sort of course, and they have prevented these provocations for escalation. But I think this escalation can go on. And when it comes to China, I think there is another factor, and that factor is the US South Asia policy, where now India has been told to take a number of measures to contain China. And probably, that is, these kinds of incidents, though small in nature, may also be aimed at pleasing the United States, so that, a message of their military engagement with China goes on, and they keep receiving the US military and other assistance which they've been doing in the past. So, there are multiple dimensions of these kinds of provocations which are known both to Pakistan as well as to China. But I think India should keep the lessons of the 1962 war with China, and our response to such provocations in 1965, and then in February, whenever when they came and they provoked us and they carried out aggressions against Pakistan in the form of failed air raids.
Right. Sir, please stay with us. We've also got with us online Raja Kesar, who's a foreign affairs expert. Thank you, Raja Kesar, for joining us.
My pleasure.
As you could hear the discussion now, the aggression by the Indians across the line of control, the ceasefire violations we're talking about for the last couple of days, a new round has killed a young school teacher who's just newly married just 2 years ago. And it's very tragic indeed. And then also there's tension between India at the Chinese border. There's been a face-off there between the soldiers. Several were injured. So what is your take on this?
Well, thank you, Sharmeen. Indeed, this is very agonizing development, and it comes as a surprise because the rest of the world is busy in fighting corona pandemic, and Modi-led aggressive proto-fascist government in New Delhi is ensuing a new round of conflict with Pakistan on its borders, on its LOC, and with China as well. So, there is a method in the madness. It is not coming as a sporadic development or as a sporadic eventuality. If you just dissect this thing, why India is doing it, so there are many plausible explications which we can render apparently. Well, one and the foremost is that you see what is happening in Jammu and Kashmir. There is an unprecedented violence. There had been a very furious resistance movement in past a few weeks. You must have seen that people, they took to the streets despite this corona lockdown, and despite a lockdown in place for last 8 months. There had been a very robust indigenous response to what India has done on August of 5th, 2019, and the way their local heroes, they have been martyred like Riaz Naiko. So this is something which is shaking India to its basis. So that is why, to have diverted the world's attention to what is happening in Kashmir, and to just give that everything is all right. India is very good at distracting the public opinion, distracting the world opinion. So they are using Pakistan's border as a kind of, where they could use it as a distractive parameter, and they could tell it to the world that there is provocation coming from Pakistan side, and they are retaliating against that. One thing. Secondly, you see that Modi has been taken to cleaners by opposition parties, by his own political rivals, for his failure in combating this corona situation within India, and the way a very strict and a very insane kind of lockdown had been put into place in India, and the way that has led to the human rights violations within India, the way
Right.
state brutally.
Raja Kesar, please
Yeah.
stay with us. I want to go back to the General Saab, General Raza. The reasons why this is happening, we've discussed now. The chance, we've seen the situation in Indian occupied Kashmir, and it flares up recently. Senior commander over there, Riaz Naiko, was also killed. What are the chances now that there could be some sort of a false flag operation there, and how can Pakistan be better prepared for that, sir?
Yeah, first of all, about the murder and martyring of Riaz, I think most unfortunate because as you are aware, he was a young mathematics teacher, and in 2012, when he saw at least 100 people being murdered, innocent people, he witnessed that. That was actually his motivation to pick up armed resistance against India. Similarly, now after the events of 5 August last year, I think there is a new generation of angry Kashmiris which have decided, not only in the occupied Kashmir, but all over the world. I'm talking of the Kashmiri diaspora, which have united to resist whatever illegal measures India is doing, whether they are in the form of unilaterally altering their own constitution, or whether it is in the form of falsifying and modifying maps to deceive the world. I think this has been opposed by everyone. The chances of false flag operations, they were there in the past, and they are still there now. They have always been trying to do that. It is their state policy to misuse the Indian armed forces, unfortunately, for political gains, for winning elections, and for diverting the attention of their people from the incompetence of their government and the incompetence of their armed forces. But let me assure you that the government, the people, and the armed forces are fully prepared to thwart any such actions that India may undertake. And if they do so, I think they will be given a befitting response. Pakistan has a policy of escalation dominance, where our response is going to be very measured, but it is going to be one up from whatever the Indians are doing. We demonstrated this last year, and I think our response should not be miscalculated.
Right. Raja Kesar, now coming back to you, General Sab was talking about Riaz Naiku, who you mentioned as well earlier, how this new wave of young Kashmiri leaders coming up. Previously, it was Burhan Wani who was killed. He was also just a student leader, and he saw his brother being tortured and eventually turned towards militancy. Same thing that happened with this gentleman, Riaz Naiku. He was a school teacher. How does a person like that become converted into militancy, and will we be seeing a lot more of the youth in Kashmir taking up arms? And there's also this debate about they're called terrorists by India, and they're their own freedom fighters. So how do you convince the world that these are actually people struggling for their freedom and they're not terrorists?
Well, Sharmeen, one thing that this has diffused India's persistent denial on one front, that it had always been saying that Kashmir's resistance movement is externally sponsored, and it is Pakistan which is poking up the insurgency movement over there in Jammu and Kashmir. But it has been completely nullified in the wake of Burhan Wani, then Manan Wani, Rafi Bhatt, and now this Riaz Naiku. So if you see why these people, they are getting prone to join this insurgency movement, it is not a very good trend. It is indeed agonizing, and it is indeed unfortunate that the unemployed and employed youth, which is deeply frustrated, which is deeply avenged with India's dealing of Kashmiris, they are taking to violence, are taking to guns to actually combat and to express their own anger towards this situation. So why it is happening? Because you see, power, it has its own dynamics. When you brutally use a power over a certain thing, when you brutally use power over a certain community, then the response is likely to come. And this response is very ferocious right now. You see people over there in Kashmir, they are furiously protesting and resisting against the India's onslaught. And because you see, Kashmiris, they have the right to live with dignity. And this is the right which India has not accorded them. It is the right which is enshrined in the United Nations basic human rights charter. So this charter is basically stripped off from Kashmiris, and the way India is dealing with them for past 30 years in particular and for past 70 years in general, it is very abominable, and it is something which India is right now paying. And it is not only in Jammu and Kashmir where India is feeling the burnt of this response. You see, it is happening in Assam as well. It is happening in Bihar as well. It is happening in Punjab, where even Sikhs, they are protesting against the onslaught. The way they have been persecuted in 1980s, and the way the government it treats them today. So all of these things, they are symptomatic of a fact that India is a proto-fascist state. It is currently being ruled by a Hindu jingoist whose mentality is a Hindu nationalist mentality, which is aggressive and which is non-accommodative towards the other minorities at large. They aim at building Hindu Rashtra.
Pakistan wants to take the situation where India keeps accusing Pakistan of having terror launch pads on its soil, and which they use to justify the LOC violations that we see. The Pakistan's planning to take that to be heard at the United Nations. Do you see that making any kind of progress in the future?
Well, this is the only recourse in the diplomatic circles, in the field of diplomacy, which you have to do. No saner voice can clamor for war. But it is again a reality that the war has come to the doorsteps of those nations who had been reluctant in going for war. So this is why Pakistan always had been prepared to fight a war. This is why when India tried to do an adventure unilaterally on 27th of February, it was given a very jaw-breaking response. So this is always going to happen, but you see, yes, international community needs to be taken into confidence. Pakistan, in the near past, has taken these diplomats to the visit of the line of control. to give them the briefing on the on ground and the real time situation. That was a very praiseworthy effort. I think such like of initiatives can actually turn this opinion making on Pakistan side. And let me tell you, Sharmeen, that in past 1.5 years, ever since this Pulwama has taken place, the international opinion has greatly tilted in favor of Pakistan, because the way Pakistan has ensured a brinksmanship by releasing the Indian captured pilot, and the way Pakistani Prime Minister diffused the situation and didn't let warmongering spirit further go on. So that was being praised at the international level greatly.
Right. Thank you for joining us, Raja Kesar, who's a foreign affairs expert. General Raza, coming back to you now, your thoughts on some analysts seem to think that having this reconciliatory and sort of a peaceful stand that Pakistan has, with keeping in mind India's belligerence since Prime Minister Modi has come into power with the BJP government, they say that some may appear as weak, etc., and it's not going to thwart what they're trying to do, and there should be a more aggressive stance from Pakistan. Would you agree with that?
I think the present stance of the government of Pakistan is a reflection of what the people of Pakistan want. The people of Pakistan wants, a very balanced kind of a response from its governments to any provocation that may come from any side. The government response in February last year was seen by the whole world. That response was actually endorsed by both houses of the parliament. It was endorsed by the people of Pakistan. And I think that was an example of how Pakistan is going to respond in the future as well. Coming, to the recent, again, international developments, you are aware that the United States government department that monitors international religious freedom has, I think, for the first time in its history, nominated India as a country of particular concern for its bigotry and religious restrictions and lack of religious freedom in India. So I think even the closest friends of India are now actually issuing warnings to India. India has actually now become an apartheid state in the true sense of the word, because of the hatred of its minorities, because of its caste system, and because of also, the curbing of journalism and telling of truth by the media. This again is also being now recognized the world over. Again, when you talk of the true definition of a rogue state, again, India is acting like a rogue state because of its total disregard for all international treaties, whether they are with China, whether they are with Pakistan or its other neighbors. So it is a rogue state in that way also. And I think the present government in India is responsible for that. They want to draw the attention again of the very bad state of their economy. They want to divert the attention of the people and the world, and that is why they are doing it.
Right. So, and it seems as if it's coming to the world's attention as well. Thank you so much, General Raza Khan, for joining us on the program. And finally, we move on to renowned writer and playwright Athar Shah Khan, who created an iconic character called Jaidi. He passed away here on here on Sunday. He was 77 years old. He leaves behind a wife and 4 sons. He was suffering from a heart condition and diabetes. He was born in the Indian state of Rampur on January 1st, 1943, and his family migrated to Pakistan after independence, where he came to Lahore and settled there, had his primary education, and he graduated from the Urdu Science College in Karachi and obtained a master's degree in journalism from the Punjab University. And he wrote several and performed also in several renowned shows and plays, and he also contributed to quite a few films as a story and dialogue writer. So unfortunately, Pakistan has lost him and he passed away on Sunday at the age of 77, Mr. Athar Shah Khan, the creator of the character Jaidi. So that concludes our program for today. Thank you for watching Newsroom, and we'll see you next time.